Enough about me. Let's talk about one Josh Giddey.
Or you. Not nothing about him. Let's talk about more of Jesse.
Exactly.
The Bulls are trading two-time all-defensive team guard Alex Caruso to Oklahoma City for guard Josh Giddey. This came from Adrian Wojnarowski yesterday. It just dropped in our laps yesterday afternoon, Jesse. And so when I saw the deal, my thought was, well, there are several reasons why this is happening. Number one, the Bulls are not going to pay Alex Caruso a 4-year, $80 million deal because that's what's on the line. That's how much and there's no way for someone who's 30, they're going to pay him that. You would think that if you are ready to win, that he would be a nice piece for you, but they traded Josh Giddey. My initial thoughts with this is, okay, I've seen Josh Giddey play with Oklahoma City. He's a guy, he's 21 years of age, and I think he could get better with Donovan as his head coach, but he's not going to be this immediate difference maker. I want to make sure Bulls fans know that here's a talent that's very raw and very green. He can pass the ball well, but doesn't shoot well. You know, in the NBA, as you well know, Jesse, if you cannot shoot, especially from distance, then you're limited as a ball player. And even though for a big guy he can pass the ball, this is not one of those moves where he's like, oh, my God, it's a seismic change for the Bulls, because that's not the case.
Yeah, so here are my initial thoughts. First of all, I would ignore the end of his season where he faded. He is 21. That'll be long forgotten if he improves here in Chicago. And remember, plenty of time to improve at just 21. I know he'll be a restricted free agent. But my initial thought also was, okay, they got 9 years younger. That's good. They got 9 years younger. That's good. You have to give up something to get something. My next thought also in the positive way was, okay, Caruso's good, but he does have a ceiling as a player at 30 years old. Josh Giddey's ceiling should be a lot higher. His skill set says that, and his age certainly says that. I'm going to keep harping on the idea that he's 21. Think about it. He could play 3 more years and start entering the peak of his career if the Bulls handle him right and keep him on the roster. So those were all the good things. I think the negative things, I aligned myself with Mike Wilbon's take yesterday on Waddle and Sylvie, and that was simply that they traded him at the wrong time, Caruso. They didn't get as much for him. They probably could have gotten draft pick compensation plus a player like Giddey if they had done it at the deadline. Let me 5 minutes in, make a baseball analogy, and I think it's a good one. I talk a lot about closers. Closers are much more valuable at the trade deadline than they are in January. Gleyber Torres would never have been traded for Aroldis Chapman in January 2016. That only happens when your team has World Series aspirations and you need to overpay a little bit, and that's what the Yankees did. That's what the Cubs did.
Yes.
In trading for Chapman for 2 months. Gleyber's still starting for the Yankees. Same thing here. Caruso was so valuable at the deadline, especially for a team like Oklahoma City. The Bulls could have gotten more, but they didn't. Now you go to an offseason trade, and that's why it's more of a 1-for-1.
Now, the question is whether or not the story is true from CHGO on whether or not the Bulls said, we're not going to trade Alex Caruso because we're trying to make a playoff push. So if that's the case, then that says a lot about the Bulls. If that story is true, that the Bulls said, no, we're going to keep our core intact. We're not going to make any wholesale changes because if we take some players off the roster, then that will decrease our chance of getting the playoffs. The point is, though, Jesse, is that you know that you're not one of the top 8 teams at that time, at the deadline. You end up not being one of the top 8 teams or 9 teams in the NBA. As a matter of fact, you had to be in the play-in just to be able to get involved in some kind of postseason. The object should not just be, let's turn the lights on for one night at the United Center and then just say, well, that's all she wrote. You can't do that, Jesse. Like, you either have to be all in or all out.
Yeah, it's very Jerry Reinsdorf-like to turn it on for one night.
I want you to think
that story must be true because why else wasn't he traded? And then you trade him 3 months later?
It doesn't make sense,
right?
I mean,
unless they think they were blown away getting Giddey at his lowest. You know, maybe Oklahoma City doesn't trade Giddey if he has a great playoff, but he didn't. So I don't know. I think, of course, they wanted to go for it because that's been their mindset the last few years. Let's just get in. Let's just get in.
That doesn't mean anything to the Bulls fan. Like, I believe that there's value of getting to the playoffs, but it's the play-in. There's a difference in that. Like, the Bulls didn't have enough to be able to get themselves into the playoffs and do some damage. Not at that position, right? And so my overall point, though, when it comes to Josh Giddey. This is the first actual trade by the Bulls since August of 2021. I want you to think about this. Think about the sport that you work in baseball.
Yeah.
And if a front office stood pat and said, no, we like our core. Yeah. Think about a GM not making a deal since August of 2021. That GM would be fired.
Insane.
In
and
any sport.
It's big news. It's big news here because they finally did something. And that's why I'm actually okay with it just on that basis. The definition of doing the same thing over and over and getting a bad result is insanity, right? The definition of insanity, I should say, is doing something over and over again and getting the same bad result. So at least they're trying to break up the pattern here. And they did get 9 years younger. Caruso's more of a final piece for a championship contender than any lead dog. Maybe Giddey can be a lead dog. It's a risk versus reward thing, and I think the risk was certainly worth it. But I agree with Wilbon. It could have come with more if it happened at the deadline.
The reason why that Wilbon and all of us that watch the NBA say that is because Oklahoma City has accumulated like 7,000 picks.
Yeah.
I want you to just do just one Google search, Jesse, of how many picks Oklahoma City has. You would be stunned of how much capital they have for the future. That's why
while having a good current team.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, which is hard to do, by the way. But this is smart on the part of Presti to be able to build as many draft picks as they have. And for the Bulls not to get at least one of them, I just don't understand that. I just don't get that. I also would say this. It makes me wonder about Lonzo Ball's future because I could see a backcourt of Giddey and Kobe White on this team. What does that mean? I just feel like it's just a lateral move, Jesse. I don't believe that this move is something that you say, well, now the Bulls have improved, because they have not. It makes me wonder about the future of Lonzo Ball, one. But the other thing that it makes me wonder about is what's next. Are you retooling or are you rebuilding if you're the Bulls? That's the big question on the table.
I think we could ask a lot of different questions. I'd like people just to rate the trade 1 to 10, 1 to 10. 10 being, baseball analogy. Jake Arrieta come to town, and 1 is what's one of your bad White Sox trades? Pick up. What's a 1?
Well, just choose one.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Just choose one.
Yeah, choose any Rick Hahn, Kenny Williams. Project for sure. So I'm with you. Like, and it is an initial step back because Caruso is a proven player, defensive player. But sometimes you take one step back to take 2 or 3, 4 forward. If could Giddey turn into a star?
He will not. But go ahead.
Could he?
He will not.
He will not. No. Okay. Well, then, if you're maybe you're putting his ceiling a little bit lower than I am, just because based on age and what he can do, he's a great passer. You're a passer. If that's all you're known for, by the way, it's nice, okay, but you better have something else to your NBA game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the ceiling is certainly higher with Giddey than Caruso. I think we can admit that.
I think that is fair based on the age, as you just mentioned. Yeah. And as I said at the Open, I believe that Donovan can make him a better player. Mm-hmm. I just think there was so many talented players at Oklahoma City that Giddey became expendable. That's why he's a Bull right now. Oklahoma City is one of those young, hot teams in the West that will be heard from. They are the rock in your shoe right now. And I think that they're building towards something. That's for sure.
I mean, he's not the Paul DeYoung of the Bulls now. Like, can't start anywhere else, but he'll start with the White Sox.
Let me ask you a question.
He's not that.
Let me ask you a question. Do you want me to throw you out before the first segment? I'll be glad to throw you out. I can do this myself. If you want me to throw you out, I can do that right now.
I mean, how many times has that thought gone through your head sitting next to Cap? I mean, come on. A lot.
Come on now. I mean, every segment? Maybe every other segment.
Every time I come on with you guys?
Every other segment. He wants to throw you out.
I like when you say to me, I'm asking Jesse, Cap. I'm asking Jesse.
Well, yeah. It's a direct question to you, and he steps in there. If I ask him a question, I ask him a question. I'm asking you. It's Jesse Reyes. He's the expert. Ask the expert. Caruso, by the way, also shot 40% from 3. So, yes, he's a great defensive player. And again, you know what he is a Swiss Army knife.
And he got better offensively. Yeah.
He's a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah,
he every little thing that you need done, Caruso, if healthy, can get that done for you. So now he's not with the team. Now, here's the thing. Bulls fans, you fan how you want to fan. But from my standpoint as a Bulls fan, I will tell you that now I respected Caruso. Many teams wanted Caruso because of the little things he does. But the point is, though, is that Caruso on this team is kind of useless.
Yeah, well, that's what and Waddle said that as the trade went down, like, much more valuable to Oklahoma City than to the Bulls. And for the Bulls to recognize that is good. And I don't know, 21, he's been in the league a few years. He's got some game. If he turns into something special, it'll be a great trade. In the moment, it's not as good. And a lot of people panned it that have more expertise about this than me.
Arturas Karnisovas was asked earlier this year about exactly what he's selling to Bulls fans.
I'm selling competitive group that is competing right now for playoffs, and that's just evidence. And you were bringing up the standings. I mean, we're all bunched up in that area in the middle. So that's what I see with this team at this point. Any adjustments will be made in the future, but this group is really good.
Yeah, at the time, at the deadline, he said this group's really good. And then, of course, he goes on to say after the season was over that he was not enamored with the group and is going to be able to make some changes. I mean, what took you so long? August of 2021, finally you get a deal made.
And there's such a difference, again, the sport that I cover, man, sneaking in, you could win a World Series sneaking in. In the NBA, yeah, once in a blue moon, an 8 beats a 1 and wins the championship. But really, come on, sneaking in the East, would mean nothing. Yes, it means turning the lights on for Jerry Reinsdorf for a couple more nights. But, like, your goal should be championship, 3 stars to bring you a champion. Like, that's really what you have to shoot for. Where in a sport like baseball, you can kind of shoot to sneak in like the Diamondbacks did last year. So I don't even like a competitive group that's trying to get to the play-in or whatever he said.
Josh Giddey, just for people tuning in, he's a guy here now, the part of the Chicago Bulls. Not a very good outside shooter. Solid playmaker, though. He's got soft hands. And, again, for him to distribute the basketball, that's great. But to whom? Is Zach LaVine going to be on this team? Is DeMar DeRozan going to be on this team for the future? If Art Carney is going to be there and say, oh, we're going to make some changes, okay, make your changes. But again, it just shows you that you don't understand the art of the deal, because you have a lot of draft picks that you could have chosen with Oklahoma City, and you didn't do that yesterday. And then before that, of course, you could have traded Alex Caruso by the time you got to the deadline, it had the same result at the end of the season.
Yeah.
You could actually win into the play-in game, lost, and would have been the same result with or without Caruso.
And let me give a caveat to what I just said, because a year ago, Miami did go to the finals after winning the play-in, right? But and they beat the Bulls. But there is no way you can convince me in any scenario, if the Bulls had beaten the Heat, they would have gone to the finals. No chance.
You ain't
no
Miami
chance.
either. I mean, there is something sewn into the fabric of the Heat that allows them to do stuff like that.
No way. So, but my point is, it does happen once in a blue moon.
Sure.
But you really need to build championship rosters heading into the playoffs, not sneak in and be out and around with no chance.